2 o'clock waiver stuff is part of the exercise we've been dealing with in talking with Anton. He's obviously had a good camp, well positioned for our group. Speaking for Jim with the conversations we've had with Monty is he's comfortable with him. When add to our group, we just have been waiting to look at our roster and see what we're going to do. But been communicating with Anton and Mark Lee all the way along and plan to speak with him again today.
Got mics for questions to the call.
Don, in general, how do you feel about your back end going into the season without Mac Lloyd?
Not as good. It's obviously a unique player, and we miss him. He gets back as quickly as possible. The other guys have all played for us and played important roles and minutes, but that gets expanded when you're talking about a player that plays in excess of 22, 23 minutes a night in all situations. So our whole team's going to have to recognize we're going to have to be good, and no different than having Brad out, in that regard. The good news is that Matt Grizzlick's made a lot of progress, and medically he's in a good spot. Now it's just a matter of when he feels comfortable, when Monty feels comfortable.
Jim, a couple questions. I saw just before practice began, you had Wagner over at the sidewall there, and you were talking to him. Just talk about what discussions you've had with the three guys who went on waivers, maybe specifically Wagner.
I like to communicate to everybody, what we think is going to transpire, and there's a lot of uncertainty. And I was just more talking to him mentally about, with him being on waivers in the 2 o'clock, that I appreciate him being a pro, and I don't have any answers for him at the moment, like I don't have any answers for you guys.
Did you talk to each of the three?
I did.
And the other one is just basic. What's given that Hall's back in the mix here? What do you envision as the power play?
Yeah, we got to discuss that as a staff, but because of DeBrusque's ability to create shots on his own and make a lot of plays from the half wall, the thought right now would be Hall going on first unit, DeBrusque running the second unit from the half wall.
First question would be for Don. How, if any, would a contract negotiation with a player like David maybe change once the season begins? Is there a level of respect sort of for what's going on during the regular season?
Well, both sides have been open about continuing our talks. So I don't think things change at all from the standpoint unless David takes a different position. But up until this point, we've been communicating regularly, and when he feels comfortable, hopefully we finalize a deal. But there's no timeline on that. We're just going to continue to communicate almost every day, to tell you the honest truth, and see if we can find a finish line.
Charlie, as a follow-up along those lines, what is your appreciation for David and how he's truly become one of the faces of the organization?
Well, David's a special player. We try not to get more comment, frankly, on ongoing negotiations, but David's obviously a special player. We're aware that when I say we, I say ownership's aware we need to be aggressive in trying to re-up David to a contract. And to that end, Sweens and Cam have been working on that.
One for Jim and one for Don. Jim, do you have a starter in that for opening night?
No, I don't.
And then Don, when this roster is healthy, whenever that is, everybody's back up to speed. Do you envision this as a team that will be a Stanley Cup contender this year?
I like our group. If it's a twofold issue for us. We've got to get healthy and stay healthy, which is a challenge in the National Hockey League to begin with. But if fully healthy, I think our group is deep. Performance will be dictated and be helpful to be a factor of it. But I like how our group has come together overall. I like the balance. But again, the players have to go and perform to what we think our expectations are. We're going to be a highly competitive team. We expect to be there at the end and challenge. A lot of things have to go right once you get in, but you got to get in. You got to make sure you earn that right.
Charlie, and then Cam's in the mood to chime in.
the way last year ended, you guys obviously felt like you left something on the table there. And Colorado goes and wins the cup, and everybody wants to play the game as fast as possible now. What do you want to see out of the Bruins this year? What are you looking for? What are going to be the things that you sit down and watch the game once a night? How are you going to be checking your boxes for what you wanted to see last year that you didn't get, and you're going to want to see this year?
Well, I can't speak to, I try to leave the style of play and team performance up to management here. I do feel we left some opportunity on the table last year in the playoffs. It stinks when you lose game 7 by a goal. You may have watched a game and felt the outcome might have been differently, but it was time for us to turn the page, and I expect that, speaking with Monty and with others here, that we have a very competitive team that I think, frankly, a lot of people maybe don't expect. We have a more offensive team than perhaps in years past, and that's saying a lot considering we won 51 games last year. I think Pam should probably chime in on this one.
Well, from my perspective, I want us to compete every night. That's first and foremost. I think, from a skill, throughout the lineup, I think, we're especially in the forward group, I think we're pretty deep. But for me, it's really just competing every night. I say this to our players all the time. You may not play well every night, but you can sure as hell compete every night. So that's what I expect. And, I think with the core group that we have and had for quite some time, the expectations of that are in that locker room. So for me, it's really, I don't want to see any nights off. So like I said, you may not play well, but you can certainly compete.
One for Charlie and then for Cam. Charlie, you look at the league, everyone's talking about the cap going up right now in the next few years, and the health of the league seems to be getting back on track. What's your sense as to where everything is right now?
It's funny. I think the world is, as the restrictions were lifted, and I'll just speak specifically to Boston, I feel like there was probably a filling out period for a lot of our families about whether or not they were comfortable coming into the TD Garden, regardless of what the restrictions were from the city or state. Mm-hmm. And we've begun to level set in terms of maybe those people that weren't comfortable have either moved on, sold their tickets, or decided to come back in and find some comfort in attending a game in person. Hockey, unlike most major sports, is really game driven. So it's important for us to get our fans in the building. And I feel like this will be our first year, I believe, of, dare I say, I won't say back to normal, instead this may perhaps the next normal that we're going to experience here in 22-23.
Do you get a feel, the teams around the league are in a similar position, or are some teams kind of lagging behind still? In terms of finances?
It's difficult for me to discuss other markets without getting in trouble with headquarters.
I got a track.
So, I'll just say this, I think that any indications for everything from travel to hospitality, the restaurant business seems to be coming back online, as I'll use this term again, back to the next normal.
And Cam, just your thoughts on the job Donnie's done this off season. I know he hasn't exactly got a lot of love from the fans at times. How do you think he's handled that?
Well, the narrative, quite frankly, is a little frustrating to me. We've said it many times that, from a draft perspective, we have missed on the high side, especially in 15. I'm tired of talking about 15, but if you look at who the Boston Bruins have drafted, say maybe from 15 to 18, because it may be a little unfair to look at players, 19 through 21 in their development stage. But if you look at the players the Boston Bruins have drafted and how many NHL games they've played, I think it's among some of the highest in the league. So, the narrative is a little old for me. Every GM in the league makes mistakes. We're going to continue to make mistakes, but hopefully we learn from those mistakes and limit those mistakes. And I think, Don has certainly evolved over the last few years, and our scouting staff has evolved. We certainly have high expectations and high standards, but mistakes are going to happen. But I don't think it's as bad as what the narrative is out there.
Jim, you spoke whenever you introduced about the impact of Patrice Bergeron and how you anticipated he would be the closest thing you have to a coach on the ice. How has that kind of manifested here so far in the offseason?
Yeah, I mean, it's just continued. Every situation that him and I speak about, he's always looking at it about how it's going to impact the team and how it impacts those individuals, not himself, but his teammates. So that's a coach's mindset, is always what can we do that's best for the team, and that's his mindset.
I mean, this is for either Cam or Don. Is it safe to anticipate or assume that this will be Patrice's final season?
Well, it's always up to Patrice, so we'll see how the season goes for him. I know he's taking it year by year. We're thrilled to have him back this year, and we're going to focus on this year with him.
I don't know, yeah, Patrice would be the only one to add to that. He's been pretty clear that he's taking things year by year.
For Charlie, how is Patrice different than maybe some of the other athletes of his caliber in Boston, or that you've dealt with, or Bruins you've dealt with?
I can only speak to Patrice because he's the only player that I've had regular interaction with. But I will tell you that I remember the day we drafted Patrice. I've seen him develop into 5-time Selke winner. We're so fortunate to have him on the ice as a Boston Bruin, and I'm just reflecting how quickly the years pass. And I don't mean to sound nostalgic, but I also want to impress upon our roster that this is a real opportunity for our players that have a year with Patrice on the ice, the younger players in particular, to learn from him and to be a teammate. And someone in your group who alluded to maybe having a coach on the ice, and to a certain extent that's what Patrice is doing. He's teaching our next generation of Boston Bruin players how to be Bruins, and that's invaluable.
Two, if I could, first, Charlie, the chairman's always been a fixture at this day. And so, first of all, how is he, and why is he not here?
Chairman's well. He's quite active, as any 82-year-old would be, and he sends his regards. He's doing well. He's still the chairman of the National Hockey League. I'm going to be with him on Monday next week at the board meetings in New York City, talking about league economics and different policies. So still quite on his feet and still quite active, just not here today.
And why not here today? Just by choice or by schedule? What is-
Yeah, just some personal matters with our family that we couldn't arrive today.
Cam, if you could drill down a little bit on a previous question about basically what this team has that it didn't have last year. I'm thinking in context of your view of personnel specifically, maybe looking at new bodies here with the waiver thing I know hanging in the air, and what you saw of the style of play. I know preseason can be a bit of a dog's breakfast in terms of lineups and all of that, but specifically, what's the difference? What do you see?
Well, I think up front, we have a little bit more versatility. We bring in Zaka, who can play the wing and center, so we feel like if we always are concerned about injuries, so we feel if we have some injuries down the middle of the ice that he could slot in there and help contribute on the offensive part. We may not miss as much. Certainly, when you have Berge and Kretsch, who are top centermen in the game that help control the offense, we have an opportunity to slide Zaka in there. It gives our coaching staff a little bit more flexibility with our lineup. We're still tinkering. I think Monty can attest to this. We're still kind of tinkering with the bottom part of our lineup. I think we have a really solid top 9, and it's just a matter of what flavor we want for the fourth line. And then on the back end, with Grizz out and Charlie out, it certainly leaves a little bit of a hole there to start the year. But I think our guys are really excited about the opportunity that some of these young players have to step up and get a little bit more minutes in different situations than they normally have. So we're anxious to see how that plays out. But from a healthy lineup perspective, I think we're fairly deep. I'm excited about this roster. Obviously, you know, to your point, it's a little bit challenging at times to watch the preseason games when coaching staff's trying to figure out who we've got. You know, Monty's new. He's trying to understand the players and their personalities. So I'm excited about getting going. I think our players are really excited about this team. You know, I'm talking with the guys that have been around here a long time. There's a really special feeling in that locker room right now, and it's encouraging for me to see. It's you know, I think these guys feel like something special can happen this year.
Part of the riddle was the whole inside ice. Do you think you've got that addressed here?
Yeah, well, you know, we look at a guy like AJ who kind of surprised some of us. We kind of knew what motor he has and what he'd bring, but you know, there's a guy that's not afraid about getting inside ice. Lauko, he's shown that. He's certainly not afraid. You know, Freddie, although he didn't have the camp that we wanted, but he's the guy that, you know, certainly can get inside ice. Charlie Quell. So we've got guys that, you know, they know the expectations. You know, playing perimeter hockey is not winning hockey, so you know, these guys understand that.
Don, if the three players clear waivers, what else do you have to do before 5 p.m.?
We'll be compliant. We've got options after we put our roster in, but those guys were unfortunate part of the dynamic of both cap and roster limitations that you have, and creating flexibility with how you want to shape your roster. The decisions of money and staff would like to make for opening night and utilizing really everybody up and down the entire roster. You saw Jake Lauko practicing today, so those final decisions we made, but we have no issues once the 2 p.m. comes along, what we can do to be compliant.
And will Grizzly start on long term?
Yeah.
And then one for Cam. When you look at David Pastrnak's situation, are you expecting that he'll have roster construction on his mind as part of the equation in terms of what about the competitive roster around the team?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, obviously shot first wingers, you know, certainly wants to know who the centerman's going to be. And, you know, we made it very clear to David that we're very aware of that particular position moving forward, and we're going to do everything we possibly can to, you know, to fill that void when that happens. You know, but we, you know, I think he also sees that we signed Charlie McAvoy long term. We signed, we got 2 good goaltenders that are with us. We got Lindholm long term. Taylor Hall's here for, you know, a few more years. We got Brad Marchand for a couple more years. So, you know, we're not stripping it down by any means. And I think he's certainly been told that, and he recognizes that. And he knows that we're in a good position this year. And you know, we're here to show everybody that, you know, we're not stripping this thing down. We're gonna, you know, continue to build on it.
Jim, last year the Bruins split games and starts exactly down the middle between Sweeney and Olmark. In your experience in the NHL, have you felt the team is better off with a clear number 1 goaltender and a guy who obviously can play and be competitive, but have that number 1?
The Bruins have had tremendous success both ways, and I think a lot of credit's got to go to Bob Senza. He's done a great job developing the relationship with the goalies, making sure that the Bruins get excellent goaltending throughout the regular season, be able to opportunity to get in the playoffs. I think everyone would say ideally you have a number 1 by the time you get into the playoffs and after the trade deadline, and that's up to one of those 2 goaltenders to emerge ahead of the other. But in today's NHL, to have success in a regular season with as many 3 and 4s as you have to have 2 goalies that can do the job night in, night out.
Hey, Cam, taking all that you just said, is there some, and when it was learned Krejci and Bergeron were coming back, there was an element of kind of one last run, you know, with these guys this year and uncertainty after that. Is it fair to view it that way at all? Is this being sort of one last run with this particular group, because there is at this present day a lot of uncertainty beyond this year?
I think it's very fair. I mean, you know, like we talked about earlier with Bergie, it's really up to him, and you know, Kretsch, I think same way. You know, these guys have had long, successful careers, and like I said, I think this group in the locker room there feel like something special can happen this year. You know, it's a close team. And and when I say team, it's a real team. And I think their teammates look at this and say, this might be the last year we have the ability to play with these guys, so let's take as much advantage of it as we can, and that's the feeling I get from inside that locker room.
Donnie, when Grizz comes back, and let's say Riley clears and he's back in the team, you guys are pretty crowded on the left side. Do you look at that as a good problem, or is it also an opportunity to get cap relief or address another need?
Could be all the above, Jimmy, to be honest with you. Where we start right now, without having those guys, you feel like you go through defensemen during the course of the season. You just have to have guys that can step in and play minutes in all different situations, which we currently have, and we'll be better off when we do. Clearly the decisions we made yesterday were to give us potentially more flexibility in really any way, whether that's to move guys around the roster, or whether that's to utilize cap space, because they're both really important. And again, it's not an easy conversation to have with players by any means, but it's just the nature of some of the things that we have to deal with. Put the roster together when you're teetering on guys that are ready to come back, as opposed to guys that it's an unknown. These guys are all ready to come back, and within a shorter period of time. So they're not out, for the whole season, where some teams can plan accordingly in that regard. So, but we're fortunate in that regard because they're good players.